This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 8th, 2018, to the Courier News and the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tappan to Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone.
Here.
Mr. Collins. Ms. DeMizio.
Here.
Mr. Fahey.
Here.
Mr. Hayek. Mr. Hunsinger.
Here.
Mr. Martins. Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky. And Mr. Fountain.
Yes. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm with him. It's okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hayek and Mr. Martins arrived before the pledge. Thank you, gentlemen. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session in accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss confidential HIB personnel and legal matters, after which action will be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in the executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Unfortunately.
Okay, welcome back into public session, everybody. First item on our agenda is board correspondence. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate both Bob Morrison and Lisa DeMizio, two of our board members who have achieved the necessary credits in order to be considered for the New Jersey School Boards Association Board Member Academy's Master Board Member Award. They've gone to quite a few meetings and other training sessions to reach this level of training. The hard part is now they have to pass a test, but congratulations to both of you on doing it.
Thank you.
That's it for correspondence.
No taking pictures. You know, I was gonna say something, but no, I can't do it.
So we'll now try and get serious and turn it over to our superintendent for her comments.
So I am going to ask the two members of the media if you can wait to post the next piece of information until 8 p.m. because I like to coordinate it with the K-8 districts and we all try to send it out at the same time. Okay, so we are closing school tomorrow. And in the posting on our website and the email that's going out, and everyone's phones will start buzzing at 8 o'clock because you'll be getting the call and the email. But we will clarify on the email to remind everyone, and we actually are approving that revision on tonight's agenda, that we will have school Thursday, April 5th and Friday, April 6th. You'll notice that the days in our rotation are not in sequence because the days that we have selected for them are the ones we've missed the most of given the snow days. So Thursday's a day 4, Friday's a day 2. None of the adults care about this, but the students do. And that will all be on the website and in the email. So at 8 o'clock, we will be sending out notification along with the 4 K-8 districts. So I do want to say from the last storm.
You might also just want to point out that if we're closed Thursday, there's one more day that's being approved.
Yes, we have that, a contingency on the agenda that if in the event that we end up having to be closed Thursday, then we will be in school on Wednesday, April 4th. So I'm hoping that that won't occur, but you never know what will happen. And just, as a follow-up from the last storm, the township kept very, very good communication with us. Actually, the police departments of all 4 townships were updating me on road closures, which then I could share with our transportation department. But the Warren Township OEM in particular and Jane Ash did a really, really nice job of communicating and of keeping us apprised with JCP&L. And I actually have to thank Senator Kane and Assemblyman Bramnick and the county superintendent, Roger Jinks, because I was in communication with all of them and they were trying to help us to get back on the grid with getting power back at the high school. So they were all very responsive all weekend long. And I really appreciate that, so that we were able to get back in school on Monday. So it was, a very concerted effort to get us back here. Which was, certainly very helpful. And then the other item I want to mention is our musical is coming up this weekend, Guys and Dolls, and I feel for them because they have had to deal with many school closures, which have impacted their rehearsals. And they have rolled with it, and they have put in extra time, where they've been able to. So I have no doubt that it's still going to be an outstanding show, regardless of any practice time that they've missed, because they always put on an amazing show. So I encourage everyone to come and see it, and I appreciate their flexibility in the midst of all of this. I know, they're panicking a little bit in terms of the pending storm, because Thursday's their opening night. So I wish them luck, and they always put on an outstanding show, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Okay. The only thing I want to add is, those of you who were at the last meeting will recall that we had a discussion on the gun control resolution that had been offered by the New Jersey School Boards Association. At the end of that meeting, or at the end of that discussion, I said that we would bring it back tonight for an up or down vote, along with any other resolution similar that someone might want to submit. No others were submitted. I just forgot to put it on the agenda, but that's why you have the handout with you, and we'll have a vote on it later. I have no other comments.
Do we have an item number for that?
No, we don't.
You'll just have to
We'll
bring it up from the floor.
Okay, so, where would that go?
bear with me.
Good question. It would be,
It's a separate vote anyway.
it wouldn't be a D.
It's not a D, it's not a C.
C,
Is it an A?
administrative.
It's an A or a B. It's not really curriculum. We'll call it an A.
A14?
Yes, A14.
I'll ask, is Greenbrook able to vote on this then?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Bring that up.
It's not,
We're going to take your vote.
we haven't
We'll-
started.
Well, it depends. Are you going to vote yes or no?
Well, technically, yes.
want to vote?
Yeah, you can vote on anything.
You can vote on that because it does impact Greenbrook students.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Stiles.
I do. Mr. President, I have one item that I wanted to point out. It was new to the agenda on item number D22. They added a last-second software license. The World Language team was working on replacements for quite some time. They were working on replacements for the computer labs that they had in the World Language department. They came up with this software license that's used by, among other places, Massachusetts, schools in Massachusetts, Connecticut. They were very high on it. They wanted to use this, they wanted to push it forward quickly, so it could be used for the AP exams. So I told them, okay, I'll bring it forward to the board. The cost of it's $12,650. That's for the whole year. That is for a one-time fee to put it on our server, and it's also for training, for 2 sessions of training. It covers 30 licenses at any given time, and the idea is we're going to use this as a 1-year pilot, just to look at it and see if we like it, then we can go forward with it. It'll be less than the 12. It'll be around 10 or 11, I think. Actually, it's less 2,500, less 900, so it's 3,500 less. So that would be the cost if we like it. The only thing is we may add more users. Right now, we're just doing 30. But they felt it was important for the AP exam, so.
Tim, when you say for 1 year, so are we talking the academic school year that ends in June, or are we talking a year from when we purchase it?
No, a year from when you purchase it. I wish it was the academic year, it makes my life easier, but.
Any other questions for Tim on that?
And just to be clear, the D22 is 2 separate items.
There are 2 items.
One item is for what you just talked about, and then the second item is dealing with the semi-annual door inspections, correct?
Correct, that's just the exterior doors.
The one that's in italics that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
Chester Technical.
Chester Technical, sorry.
Okay. Emma,
Hello, everyone.
hello.
The Junior Statesmen of America Club attended the Winter Congress February 23rd through 25th in Arlington, Virginia. They were able to get 2 out of 4 bills passed, and our student Jeffrey Stickler won Best Speaker Award. Congratulations to the Watchung Hills Robo Warriors. The team made it to the quarterfinals at Mount Olive and won their first ever Control Systems Award, which gives the team 5 additional district points to help qualify for Lehigh. In January, students auditioned for the All-State Ensemble, and the following WHRHS students have been selected. For the All-State Symphonic Band, Lindsay Shee and Kathleen Liu for the flute, Jeremy Queef for the oboe, Katie Tan for clarinet, Ryan Branco, Matthew Schaefer, and Carl Peterson for trumpet, Jack Horan for bass trombone. For the All-State Wind Ensemble, Ethan Marmolejos has been selected for tuba. Ethan Marmolejos was selected to receive the Governor's Award in Arts Education, as well as our art students Natalie Zurich and Annika Sedana were selected to have their works displayed at the Morris Museum Prestigious Art Show opening on March 16th. Eddie Kai won the Scholastic Art and Writing Gold Medal Award for his photography, Subway Dreamer, which will hang in the Carnegie Hall beginning June 7th, 2018. Jagdeep Bhatia earned first place in coding and programming at the FBLA State Leadership Conference. Watchung Hill student Valerie Wang continues to compete in archery. On Saturday, February 17th, Valerie won first place in the Columbia University Open, and on Sunday, February 18th, won second place in the NJ State Indoor Championship competition. In school events, on March 6, 2018, at 7 in the Pack, Watchung Hill's Healthy Edge Committee hosted Let's Talk, a program designed to educate parents on how they can begin conversations with their children about substance abuse and addiction. Before the start of the program, an array of community organizations were present to provide information answering any questions from parents. The Let's Talk program included a panel of speakers, including our own Ms. Jill Gleason and Ms. Julie Kumpf, as well as the county prosecutor and 2 young adults who shared their personal stories regarding drug and alcohol abuse and its deleterious impact on their lives. The audience learned about current trends involving teenagers' drug and alcohol use, signs and symptoms parents should be aware of, and information on how parents can approach the conversation with their children. The evening concluded with a question and answer session. Also tonight in Gym 5-6, the Belief Club, Belief standing for Bettering Every Life in Each Visit, is holding their annual March Madness basketball tournament. In addition to this past weekend, several students and faculty members came together in Gym 5-6 to shave their heads to fight childhood cancer in support of the St. Baldrick's Foundation. In sports news, congratulations to Dan Pillsbury for scoring 1,233 points as a Warrior. He is our boys basketball all-time leading scorer.
Thank you, Emma. Bob?
I'd just like to comment on Ethan Marmolejos. Ethan has been a 4-time All-State musician for his entire career here. The Governor's Award that he is receiving basically makes him the musician of the year for the entire state of New Jersey. He will be the only instrumentalist that will be recognized with the Governor's Award. So I think, putting it into context, it is an exceptional achievement. I believe he's probably the first student to ever receive a Governor's Award here from the state, and arguably is our most decorated musician that we've ever had come through the school. So I think it's worth noting the exceptional achievement that he's been able to attain, and the honor that he brings to the school through those achievements.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, we're now at the first opportunity for public comment. The first public comment period will be limited to agenda items for this meeting only. The second public comment period will be open to any topic. If you'd like to address the board, please come to the microphone and state your name and the town you're from. Seeing none, we will close first opportunity for public comment and move into board discussion. The 2018-2019 preliminary school district budget update. I've asked Mr. Sties, he's going to address briefly some of the new information that we've had since the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. So as you all know, we received our state aid figures. We've received our tax levy information where we can calculate the tax impact of the budget and all of our edit checks. So we were able to change some of the numbers. There wasn't substantive changes in terms of some of the edits that we had to perform. It was mainly, we had to add a few extra dollars to the special ed costs. Some of the tuitions were more, the rates were more than we originally put in, but it wasn't substantive. It was not enough. We did have a change with our tuition with our send receive at Greenbrook. It was just kind of adjusting to the numbers that we both had. We had more special ed kids coming than they had, so we talked about it, verified that theirs was correct, so we dropped it down one, which is a lot of money. It's $50,000 for one LLD student. And there was a couple of kids that they didn't have the summer, the ESY. So we had to drop that out of the budget. So those are revenue changes that we had to make in addition to some of the expenditure changes that we made, but they weren't, anything, large enough when you talk about it personally, but from a $40 million budget standpoint, it's not gigantic numbers. But the numbers the significant ones that came in obviously were the state aid. And the state aid, whether you heard the governor or not, you've certainly heard probably about his discussion afterwards. A lot of the discussion was that he was going to fund the formula, and it's something that the New Jersey legislature has wanted to do. They just haven't had the money to do it. So we received our state aid information, and on the plus side of things, we are up 120,000. If they had funded the formula, it would be 4 times that amount. That would be the increase. So we essentially got a fourth of what we really had coming to us, which is tough because, if you go back 5 or 6 years, you add those up, those are significant dollars that we didn't get. But, look, beggars can't be choosers. That's just the way it goes. So, we did receive 120,000 more in state aid, so that's a good thing. Bob had mentioned over a different conversation that he had with some folks at school boards, but there's been some rumblings that, okay, when June comes around, just be careful because there's, some of the legislature folks are a little uneasy about some of the tax revenues and the increases. If you listen to 101.05 at all, you kind of get that from the folks in New Jersey. They're not too thrilled about the idea of increased taxes and the like. So, that doesn't mean they're going to take it away now. It would probably be in June if they were going to do that. But if they're going to take away an increase, it would be 120,000. And just to give you perspective, I wrote it in the memo, but the main change I made was I just reduced our contribution of capital reserve. So that's what the state aid. That's what I kind of moved. I moved just the revenue around. So I used less of our own fund balance, so to speak, via capital reserve, and just put that state aid. So that allows us to do another, a little bit more capital projects down the road, which is significant because we have a new architect, and they're coming in here hopefully Friday, if the weather cooperates a little bit. We have, we have lights out and everything else. Although maybe it's easier for them to be here if it's if it's dark. I don't know. So that was the main change. And then the second thing, we got our, I always get questions on this one, every year with the tax analysis. So we received our tax assessments that, how the state allocates the funding. It's a formula based on, as I often say every year, it's a formula based on enrollment, elementary versus the high school students, and the assessed values in the town. So I always consider it with the 3 schools, or 3 towns, not the schools, the 3 towns as like a pie. A pie with 3 pieces. And that pie changes every year based on the number of students and your assessed values. In this particular year, the assessed value, and the big difference in the numbers was the assessed values for Watchung went up significantly compared to Warren and Long Hill. So they get a little more of the pie this year, and just keep in mind, last year they got less of the pie when it came to the increase in the tax levy for their regional school share. So I did an analysis for you guys, and I kind of bolded the one number, the main number that changed, and that was the assessed values for Watchung. So they got a little bit more, but if you look at the numbers overall, it's Warren is, Warren is 57.9%, and then there's a whole bunch of decimals, which I'm not going to read. Long Hill's 22.9, rounded up, and Watchung's about 19.2. Greenbrook's not in here because Greenbrook pays tuition. That tuition rate is $16,300 for your regular students, and keep in mind that Greenbrook pays for their own transportation.
And special ed.
And well, you're out-of-district placement
Out-of-district
special, yes,
placement.
correct. So that's how that shakes out. And when you apply that to the 2% increase and our debt service, the numbers, let's see. I'll start with Warren. So on the average home, which is about $744,000, the increase in dollars over last year, that average home, for just our taxes is $53.54. It's an increase of 0.004 on the tax rate. And that equates to about, from a dollar standpoint, 1.74%. If I go to Watchung Borough, the average home is about $710,000. The increase in the tax rate there, 0.0116. And the average dollar amount for that average home, $116.30, and that's annually. That's about a 4.6%. You can see the difference. That was with that piece of the pie that shifted. And then for Long Hill, the average home is about $501,000. The increase in the tax rate there is 0.0049, and the dollar amount on that average home is $36.41. And that's about a 1.56% increase on the dollar amount. So you can see that the impact of that tax allocation, it shifted a little more money to Watchung, and you can see it in the increases in those taxes. One other thing of note, I thought we would get about $359 for debt service aid, and we got about $359,607. They fund debt service aid at 85% of the original 40% that we applied for, and they've been doing that forever. So
they lied about the 40%?
It's never been 40%.
there's never a guarantee. In fact, there's never a guarantee for state aid. State aid can drop, as we found out one year.
And we actually had discussions last year, or the year before, about the fact that it was likely to be 85% of 40%
Yeah.
that we would get back, because they had been doing it that long.
Yeah,
I'd like to add to what Tim said about the tax
State Board of Ed
allocations,
math.
is that it's important, and, you know, I tell the people in my township committee, and you have to tell the people on your township committee and your borough committee, we have literally nothing at all to do with the allocation of our tax to the three different towns. We have no control over it.
Well, I know.
And so, you know, you take a hit every year. This year it'll be in Watchung, some years it's in Warren when they go up. It's the ratables and the kids, and there's nothing we here at the high school can do or do that changes it at all. The other thing I just wanted to mention is, as Tim said, with respect to what he did with the increase in aid that we got, that he used it so we wouldn't have to use as much of our capital reserve. And the hope then is that if the rest of the legislature doesn't support the governor with all his new taxes, and so we don't get the state aid that was projected last week, that would be the first place that we would go back to restore. You know, whether they're likely to do even more than that, you know, you don't know, but it doesn't seem terribly likely. But, you know, I think it was good planning on Tim's part to take it from there, because it gives us a way, if we come back in June and all of a sudden and say, hey, we're not going to have this money, to still be able to fund our budget.
Okay, so,
With that, yeah, I want to
All right.
open up the budget discussion to
All right.
anything anybody
so
wants to get into.
I need a little one-on-one, because I always look at these and I'm always confused. So I look at the revenue tab, right? Your revenue tab, and you're saying that the total revenues are down 2.7%, correct?
Right.
Right, then I go to the expenditure tab, right? And the expenditures are down 2.7%, right?
Right.
So how do we have an increase? That we have to, people are paying. So if the revenue is down the same amount as the expenditures, shouldn't
Yeah,
it be
it's a good-
zero?
Yeah.
What am I, what am I
Yeah,
missing?
Well, how it works is this.
Okay.
The taxes are based on the tax levy.
Right,
So the number, if you look in the revenues, on the top section there,
yep.
if you look to the top, almost actually the largest number there, of course, tax levy is up 2%.
Okay,
So your taxes are based on that tax levy.
okay.
So, and then in terms of being down 2.7%, one of the things I was talking about when we did the budget presentation was, budgets are complicated in terms of, your school budgets can be complicated. There are things in here that we used last year, like we used significant amounts of capital reserve for 2 referendum projects. One was the 2013 referendum, finishing that up, we used $700,000, and another one was the turf field, which we had sold to voters as, you're not going to pay any taxes, we're going to use our capital reserve and get state money. So that was $1.3 million of revenue, and it was on the expenditure side. So it kind of, I don't say artificially inflated, but it really did artificially inflate the budget on both sides. So that was quite a large number. And then the other piece of that was the additional state aid money, which is debt service, which we got just for that field. It was a 1-year shot. So that was, I don't know, it was like 300,000, I'll tell you exactly.
359.
Was it 320? We got 359 now, so it was about 320. So that was also out, and that's on both sides. So it's a little deceiving to say that we're spending that much less because we had those one-time items in those budgets on revenue and on the appropriation side. So it looks like, we dropped our budget 1.3, and then essentially we did, but we used an awful lot of our own budget revenue from past to fund those 2 projects. Does that make any sense?
No.
It's hard to explain because it was like,
Let me try part of it, and this may not be totally correct, and Tim will correct what's wrong
I guess we
about
have to
it.
dump it down.
But with last year's budget, when we went in and used bank cap,
Yes,
that took us way past the 2%.
Right, I remember that, yes.
So we don't have that to do this
This
year.
time.
So that's what brings our revenue down, because when we raised that and took it from bank cap, that increased our revenue last year. So without that, our revenues are down, and likewise, our budget is down, but the 2.7%,
that's that use of capital, use of budgeted fund balance. What's a better word for fund balance? Use of our
bank cap,
surplus.
it's used.
Old surplus was used to the tune of about $1.4 million. So it kind of inflated the budget on both sides.
okay,
It wasn't derived from taxes, it wasn't derived from anything else other than our own surplus.
okay. And I have one other question. On the expenditure side, buildings, operations, and maintenance.
Yes,
Okay, so that's what I see as like the big change in the expenditures.
right.
Right? That is, I need concrete, what am I looking at? That's the Chromebooks? No.
No,
Okay.
under there's a new items tab.
Okay.
We added $380,000 of maintenance upgrades. Some things that we've been putting off, quite frankly. Like the largest one there is $200,000. There's, on that facilities improvement piece under new
Okay.
items,
Yep,
200,000 was the largest, and it only gives us half of what we really want. That's
Okay.
these large heating and air conditioning coils that are in the south cafeteria. We've been putting that project off far too long. We don't get a lot of heat in there, it's not what we should have. We get ambient heat from the hallways, but that's not enough. So we really need to fix that before we have to shut it down, literally. So we this year, because we saved some money in the healthcare, that allowed us to put a few more maintenance projects in. One is to put a fire alarm system in the bus garage, which we do not have, which we should. The other one is the 12 sets of fire doors. That's to the hallways that go upstairs, those doors. Right now, they're not sufficient. We've been on this water fountain kick for about 3 years now. That's been very popular. Kind of came out at the right time with the lead testing. It seems to have worked real well. Ironically, I thought that the food service program would lose money on that thing, but they haven't. They keep making more money, and the kids keep drinking, and it's been a success. So, yeah. And then the other piece is that we put electrical, and it's really acoustical upgrades to one of our rooms that we plan on making a music tech lab. That was just an estimate that our architect, actually, we had it originally down as 50, and the architect said, you know what, bump it up to another 50, because you might need some soundproofing in that room.
Okay.
So those are the additional maintenance items. The only other item that wouldn't be on this list that did increase, I will tell you, room 108, as we all know, is the foods lab, the new
Okay.
foods lab.
All right.
The maintenance contracts for the foods lab are higher than what we had originally planned. There's no question about it. The equipment there is intense, and it's an investment, and we want to make sure we take care of it. So we
Okay.
did
So
add.
that's how you get to the 438.
That's correct.
Okay.
Tim,
Thank you.
just piggyback on Rita's question regarding that surplus money. Where did that surplus come from and how much was it?
Last year we used, you mean last year's budget?
Right, that you're carrying over, or you said that you're using surplus?
Mostly from capital reserve from last year. So we used 1.3 million last year, and it was for 2 projects.
Okay, so we're not gonna go into next year's budget being short already or having to make up
Well,
any other
that was
surplus.
this year's budget, we came into being
Right.
short. Next year, we'll be flat again.
So next year will be flatty, okay.
What do you mean flat?
Flat in terms of we don't have
We don't have
a
this- we
chunk
don't have that
from
again.
bank cap that we use.
Correct. I mean, last year was significant because the one piece was large, was the 2013 referendum, but the turf field was an anomaly. I mean, I gotta tell you, that was the first, I've never done a transaction like that in 20 years. We bought a $1 million field and used surplus and debt service aid. That was unique. And the impact on the budget was strange because it looks like you had more expenditures and revenues than, I'm not saying you didn't, but it just came from different sources, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we got to use state taxpayer money rather than the locality's taxpayer money.
Which they owe you
So are you
anyway.
kind of saying that the 18-19 budget should be compared to the 16-17 budget, not to the 17-18?
Well,
Is that what you're trying to say?
The budget, it'd probably be a better comparison.
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
But the actual might be a little tough because that's actual expenditures versus
Right.
budgetary.
Okay,
But if I had the 16-17 budget here versus, it would be a much more reasonable comparison.
okay,
Not that this isn't.
right,
There's just certain lines that if you looked at the certain lines, you'd see it.
okay. All right.
And I have to sit with you and show you.
Fred?
One day, I keep saying this.
I just have a question. Obviously, I'm coming to this new, so I'm still learning about this. But it's my understanding that we're aiming to raise the taxes by 2% because of the surplus we put into the budget. And so by raising the taxes, we're going to continue the programs that we put into place. If we raise the taxes by 2%, next year's budget, are we going to be able to go down? Is it like not raise taxes? Is that possible? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, it's kind of hard.
I know it's difficult to say at this stage, but
It's hard to answer because, it's funny, there's so many things that happen every year. So you don't know what's gonna happen next year. Like, healthcare could go up dramatically. You could have issues with the building that you have to address. There's so many things that can change, so it's kind of hard to say what next year is gonna be. I really can't.
And I'll also tell you, there's what the administration's gonna say, and there's what the board's gonna say. The board could decide, if a majority of the board felt that we shouldn't go up 2%, we would tell the administration to bring us in a budget that's less than a 2%. So that's a board discussion and decision also.
Yeah. And I would just say this, and this is an oversimplification, but, one thing is the taxes tend to always go up because our healthcare costs for, forever, basically, in this country have continuously gone up,
Substantially more.
So, until that, that's a huge issue in this country, and until that's addressed maybe at a national level, that's probably gonna be the trend in our budget. So,
Tim, what percentage of our budget would you say is discretionary?
It's 1 or 2% at most. It's
So,
not all
discretionary.
That's the other piece too.
I mean, it's essentially,
Well, yes, but in terms of what, the things we actually talk about,
Not
there's
once
so
you
much of it that
ratify
is
contract.
Right.
set before we even have the budget discussions based on the contractual costs and things like that. So just to give you an idea that there's,
Thank
we don't have a lot of flexibility.
I mean, we were more aggressive this year than most in looking at programs and trying to find ways to fund programs that are, we would think is more prescribed, I guess, is that the best word for it? And are better for the students as opposed to trying to maintain things that have been here. We're-
Specifically with reallocating staff and resources.
Yeah, we tried to reallocate the staffing, the sources, and the key was that we had to make some assumptions on where the students were going to be, which is not easy. You got to assume that, okay, in these 4 math classes or English classes, we can drop a teacher here to fund a teacher over here. That's kind of where we were going this year. And we spend an awful lot of time doing that because we honestly wanted to make certain programs grow, one being computer science, that's the thing we talked about, because that's popular and it's something that most of the schools are doing right now. And the same thing with the music tech program. We had a lot of discussions last year on the music program, and the music tech program was a great fit for us. And we just happened to be working with a new architect right now who's done that type of room before, which helps. So that was something we really spent to me, I thought we spent a lot of time on that with the other administrators as well. Right, thank you.
Greg?
Just a comment for some historical perspective. One, this board had voted on a less than 2% tax increase in the past a number of years ago. And 2, keep in mind that the base on which future changes occur is based on what you did in the past. And so if, for example, you decide you're not increasing, then your base actually stays flat, and then it becomes a cumulative snowball effect of lesser financing available for you for years to come. So those are all things that are considered when we talk about the budget.
Bob?
And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why we're in this particular budget condition that we're in is because of the significant changes that we made to healthcare.
Yes.
And so as a result, if we would have stayed where we were, we would have seen, a significant increase again in our healthcare costs, which would have made this conversation significantly more difficult. And because of the negotiation moving to a new healthcare co-op system that we're in, as a result, that has helped significantly because we actually didn't see an increase in healthcare costs this year. But that's not going to continue.
No.
So this year we're kind of getting, a little bit of a break, a smart break that Tim was able to identify for us. But going forward, we're going to have some challenges because those costs are going to increase back at their normal rate.
Right.
And our enrollment is going to be continuing to shrink. So we're going to have that issue. But I have one question and one point I want to make. On the music tech lab that you're going to be building, I didn't see, has there been any consideration of possibly leasing that equipment, putting that equipment into a lease payment plan as opposed to just budgeting for it outright this year?
I tried to stay away from the lease purchases this year on all the equipment because we have one coming off next year. That's why. If we were, we could finance it in a way where the payment would start the following year. That is a consideration if we need to. I just didn't want to add another lease purchase without one coming off. That was really why.
Because certainly that's another way to approach it, but I certainly understand your logic. The second thing is, and I wasn't here at the last board meeting, but I did go through the budget presentation, and I looked at the comparisons that we did on where we were when you compare us to the 9 other school districts that you put in our, you've identified as our peer group, right, for this type of comparisons. And you're looking at it from a standpoint of what the dollars are. How do we compare dollars,
Right.
To these other districts? And the way we really need to take a look at it is what's the percentage of our expenditures so that we can compare what percentage of our budget are we spending on co-curricular activities, instruction, administration versus the percentage of the budget that the other schools are spending on those same things. And the reason why I bring that up is when you look at that, and it's one of the things that we've talked about in the past, our administration cost is at the highest percentage of every district in that peer group. So we have the highest percentage of our budget that's going to administration versus the others. When you look at the money that we're spending on instruction, that area we're 6th. And then when you look at the money that we're spending in co-curriculars, we're 8 out of 10. So, I think when we talk about, when we look at the budget, and particularly when we look at the budget moving forward, we're really going to have to take a look at what our spending priorities are and how we manage this into the future, because it just doesn't make any sense to be at the top level on administration and to be on the bottom level on co-curricular, in my opinion.
We talked about that at the last meeting. I raised that, we talked about that. One thing to mention is that as a standalone building, it will cost us more in administration as opposed to the districts with many buildings. But also, my understanding is, and I know districts that do this, they don't report administrative costs. They hide it in other categories. And I think Tim's more honest, and he
Wow.
reports it.
I want to pick on my.
I understand that. But let me,
Yes.
if I may.
Appears that we're spending more than other districts.
No, but if I may,
Yes.
when you look at the peers that we're comparing against, for the most part, we are being compared against other regional districts. And so when you look at Hunterdon Central and Pascack Valley and Ramapo, those are individual single-building districts.
No, they have multiple high schools except for Hunterdon Central. Ramapo has 2, Pascack has 2.
So all of the 9 other people in our peer group, they all have multiple buildings except for Hunterdon Central?
No, but a large percentage of them.
Right, so, but I mean, then what we can do is then take a look at just single buildings and see how we stack up.
But then you don't know how they report. I think that is.
Well,
I
it's
think
state
that's-
reported.
We did a first student comparison as well, and we're not at our ratio is not the highest for that, or I should say is not we have more students per administrator than many of those districts.
Well, let me throw this one out there. Because we purchased a software this year, that IDEX. We did go forward, and when I started using that, partially to get some of this information and to get peers. I hope that's not what it
Guys and dolls?
Guys and dolls.
Those are the dollars,
I hope.
I think.
I hope.
So, this is something that I want to take a little
They
deeper
actually just
dive
had a snowden
into
phone call.
with the committees, because, when I did the presentation, I put things in there, and, there are warts. I mean, you can look at the numbers, and you can look at the pictures and say, you know what, that doesn't, and I agree with you, it doesn't look good, but I'd like to know why. Because there's reason,
Yep.
there's lots of reasons why, and one of them, I did check, our administrative staff, if you take the people that are in those categories, it's essentially the central office, the principal's office, all the VPs, all the administrators except for the supervisors, so if you take
Directors.
that group, we have 13 of those people, and the average years of experience is 23. So I think that's a piece of it, but I'd like to find out, by checking with our peers, I'd like to see, you know, if I can get, now that's gonna be the hard part, getting information out of them that they may not wanna give, but there's ways to get it, but I just wanna find out where, you know, comparing apples to apples. And the other thing, that when you look at this, there's regional differences. So like you saw some of those Bergen County schools, they had high numbers. Well, their costs are higher, you know, so that's a piece of it too. But I think I can factor that in using some of this software, which I'd like to take that deeper dive because you know, the way the numbers look, because you heard parents say, well, you don't spend enough on this, and well, when you look at those numbers and you look at where we rate to these other folks, you know, you think, oh, you know, well, we do spend less than 9 of the 10 schools in co-curricular. We do spend per pupil. I'd like to know why. So I think, to your point, I think that needs some study.
Well, and my point is not necessarily as it relates to this budget discussion, but the fact that and it's, I'm kind of repeating myself from a year ago, where before we had the issue, you know, the advantage of the healthcare costs, I was then concerned about the fact that this year was going to be the tough budget year.
Right.
And the reality is, it's not this year that's going to be the tough budget year, unless you've got any other rabbits. You know, it's going to be next budget year that we're going to have some of these challenges, and we should be looking now at these issues in a very thoughtful way.
Yeah, because you could go up 13% next year on the health insurance. You know, that's what happened in Long Hill when we went. We got the savings and then it went right back up.
Yeah, it could.
I agree with Bob, if you make a valid point, but another way to approach it is to, instead of comparing ourselves to other schools, look at our needs, look at our administrative needs. And I think you've suggested that in the past, and that's a maybe a better way too.
Well, I just have one question, because, you know, over time with declining enrollment, you know, we've talked about how, you know, these certain teachers are retiring, and when they retire, they're not being replaced, because we're not going to need to hire additional faculty because of declining enrollment. Has the same mentality been applied to the administration? Maybe over time, if the vice principal decides to retire, are we going to rehire for that position, or do we need as many vice principals that we have?
We've already, we actually, but when we looked at the numbers, we had 23 administrators, what was it, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, now we have 21 in terms of.
25, 23.
I'm sorry,
I thought it
25.
was 25,
It's 23. I know we've dropped 2 in the past 4 to 5 years because we have, and, you know, so for example, looking at something like that, it does get a little tricky in a school this size because we did have 4 vice principals at one point and now we have 3. So you figure you have 3 among 2,100 students, so that's 700 per vice principal. If you were to drop to 2, that becomes over 1,000 students per vice principal. So it's a, you know, losing 100 students overall in the school doesn't make it as practical to cut those types of positions just in terms of student supervision and you know, the needs. So it's certainly something that we look at every year, but it's not, you know, the impact is much different because you're talking about adding several hundred students to a vice principal. So, you know, and I know you were just using that as an example, but we actually did decrease from 4 vice principals to 3, probably 3 years ago, I think, when we did some restructuring. But those are things that we're looking at the same time we're looking at teaching positions. And they're things that we'll continue to look at.
So I think this is an operations committee project, you know, for the next several months. And I think, Tim, to the degree that you can engage them, you know, with that software as part of this, you know, collaborative strategizing, I think that would be beneficial.
I think a deep dive in that is overdue. That's why I like that software a lot, because they can get into categories that I couldn't get into before, and they get state data, and it's just a question of me getting training on it. But they can do a lot of different things that I could not do in the past with other schools, which I like.
So you can't move forward looking at, you're gonna balance your budget based off of attrition every year. So I think you gotta look forward on top of just hoping that teachers retire and administrations retire and all the numbers work. I think the administration needs to look forward to see about programs that we're offering and how they meet the needs of the district. So.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I agree, I think this should be something that should be done in the next couple of months so that it's well in advance of next year's budget, so we can form a consensus or a view as a board. on how to approach next year's budget.
And I think that's important, this consensus review of the board, because what happens is just my observation is we get a whole bunch of people come and they're like, spend money on this, and we go, yes, spend money on this, and then we come back and we say, no, wait, don't spend money, right? So as a board, we have to be able to prioritize so we can let the administration know the way to go.
Well, in terms of prioritization, though, that we do, in all of our PowerPoints, we do put down the strategic plan, which is something that's in all our documents
Yep.
that go to all of our
Yep.
administrators, ad nauseum, they get it. And they have to defend it. They have to defend what they're putting in accordance with the plan, in accordance with the goals of the board.
So Tim, then why do we only look 1 year out? How come we're not looking 2 years out, 3 years out at the bigger picture? Why do we kind of short visioned on just 1 year out, wait till we get the state aid numbers and whatever the ratables are to come up with the final budget number? Why aren't we projecting 2 years out, 3 years out to get a better vision?
We can. I mean, I did it once before, but it was, it was so difficult to do because we did it right in the midst of when Governor Christie came. So that kind of blew up the whole 5-year budget. It was,
I think I'm looking forward to the facilities plan that we're going to be
That
getting,
will.
because that's going to help us a lot. Number one, because obviously that's such a big portion of the budget, that makes a big difference when we're figuring out what we can fit in.
that's gonna help.
And they are also going to be helping us with some of the instructional facility needs, the program facility needs, so that we can plan better for that. So I do think that's going to help with those conversations so that we can really start to lay out year 1, year 2, year 3 of what our plans are for trying to fit those things in the budget. So I know Chris is really looking forward to that. We're really looking forward to getting our hands on that plan, because I think that will definitely help with that.
Anyone else, any more questions on the budget? Okay, let's move on to action items.
Mr. President, I would like to move items A1 through A6 and A10 through 13.
We're going to do 14 separately?
That was my assumption.
Okay, so through A13.
Second?
Questions?
Just point of order, we have a discussion of addendum items on our agenda. Are we skipping that and going right to voting, or are we actually going to
I
address it?
apologize, that's my fault. My eyes went right over it, Greg. So,
Thanks.
Bob, I'll ask you to hold off.
I withdraw.
Sorry, Greg.
Thank you.
Addendum items.
Do we have a number for the walk-in agenda item regarding the School Boards Association resolution?
A14.
A14? So I would make a motion to postpone consideration of A14 until the April 10th meeting.
I'll second.
What's your reason for that?
So the process of what just happened is that we can now debate that motion. And so I will give now my reasons for that. One, a number of members were not at the last board meeting. And if you look at our minutes, and it'll be on page 6 of our minutes, there is a discussion about our discussion of the resolution, but no specific comment that it would be placed on the agenda and voted upon at this meeting. So if I'm a member who was not at the meeting 2 weeks ago, I have no knowledge that it will show up at this meeting. And I appreciate Peter's comments that it was an oversight not put on the agenda, but when you look at the agenda that we received by email, it's not listed at all. So that's the second issue. Finally, when you look at a walk-in item, our historical rationale for doing that is for urgent or emergent things that we need to vote on because they have a time expectancy because of a payment or some other reason, which this is not. So to preclude disenfranchising people who did not know it would show up as a vote, even if you were at the last meeting, when I looked at the agenda, I did not see it anywhere on the agenda, so I assumed that it was tabled for some reason that we didn't know. Second, if you weren't at the last meeting, you'd have no time to prepare other than reading it this evening to be able to discuss it in an educated manner. And for that reason, since this is an important item, and I think it's important for people to be prepared, I don't think we're ready to do it tonight, which is why I'm asking for it to be postponed to the next meeting, April 10th.
Any more discussion on the motion to table it for the next meeting?
I would just say that I understand what you're saying, but I think it speaks for itself. And I think that we have, we've had, time to read it, coming in now. So I think, this is, we've had I think a good turnout for tonight, even considering that the weather's kind of,
I would
it's
like to say
raining
that-
outside. We only have one member who's not out, and that's unfortunately a rarity sometimes. So that's why I would like to, I think, now's a good time to vote on it. It's just my opinion.
I would just like to say, I wasn't here, sorry about that, but I think a board that's elected by the public should be nonpartisan, and this is directly choosing sides on what sides a group or a board or an elected official is. And I think we have no business on that, because we should be a nonpartisan
But that's
group.
going to be part of the discussion we'll have next time when it's on the agenda properly.
Okay.
And I support Greg's motion because it is a process issue, and in the past, we have had problems with walk-in items and not knowing about it. And just for process point of view, I agree with Greg, and I support it.
But I would just say to that, that's why there's the option, if you feel that way, I think that's why the option to abstain is there.
It's fine, but I think we can also have the discussion and postpone it one meeting as well, based on
Yeah, I don't know what the big
Lisa's
deal is
support
about
as well.
postponing it.
Walk-in items should be
postponed it
handled
already.
this way.
Well, and I'd also like to address it as a process item, and that is, I, should have noticed that it wasn't in the minutes the way it had been discussed here, and B, I didn't remember when we were putting this agenda to put it together. I firmly support the idea that we should only use walk-in items when there's a real necessity to get it done quickly, and so I also support Greg's motion. Having said that, unless there's more discussion, I'll call for a vote on it.
Make sure you clarify the vote.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we're voting on the motion.
You're
We're voting on the motion to
To
postpone
postpone A14.
discussion of this
until-
resolution till the April 10th meeting.
Ready?
Yes.
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
No.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes?
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Pound?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Okay. Any other discussion of addendum items?
Mr. President, I would like to move items A1 through A6 and A10 through A13.
Second.
Okay, and I just want to highlight for everybody, A11 is the school calendar revision. We've already lost, we're already short one day, so we've revised the calendar to provide school on April 6th. We're losing tomorrow, so that will meet school on April 5th. If we happen to be closed on Thursday, that would mean school on April 4th. All that pursuant to Resolution A11. Just wanted to remind people of that. Any other discussion? Greg?
I would like to amend A1, which is our minutes, and I want to go to page 6 of our minutes. And the comment that's attributed to me, I don't think accurately reflects my comments, and I would prefer it to say that Dr. Shabilsky recommended revising the NSBA resolution as opposed to recommend revising the language and would like to get a sense of community as opposed to on strengthening the language. So reading recommended revising instead of strengthening.
Okay, as a point of order, if we're amending the minutes, do we not approve the minutes tonight and then recirculate them? Or do we make a motion to amend?
Friendly amendment?
Can amend it.
Well, in a sense, because it is a word exchange, if people disagree with that, then we would need to go back and look at what was actually said. If people do not disagree with that, then we can just amend it as is.
Okay, so.
But it would require a second, which means at least one other person agrees with that language change.
It's more than reasonable just to make the change. We'll just vote on them as amended. I think that's a fine, That's
Yeah, I'll
accurate.
second it, because that's what you, that, my memory is what you. what
Just
you
said.
Just
Okay,
said.
all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't here.
Very fair.
Any other comments on A1 through A6 and A10 through A13? Excuse me. Mr. Stiles, can we have a roll call vote?
Okay, Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Abstain on A1 and A2, and yes on the rest.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Abstain on A1 and A2, and yes to the rest.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Okay, motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items A7 through A9.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on items A7 through A9? We have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items C1 through C12.
Second.
Any discussion on items C1 through C12? Have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I would like to move items D1 through D22. Wait. Yeah. D22.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussions on items D1 through D22? Seeing none, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yeah.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you, everyone. Now we move to the second opportunity for public comment on any topic. If you'd like to address the board, please come to the podium. Seeing none, I will close public comment and open the floor to other business. Mr. Morrison.
Just two quick items related to school security that came up from the New Jersey School Boards Association Board of Directors meeting. The New Jersey School Boards Association is reconvening their task force on school safety to update the 2014 report, What Makes Schools Safe. The report itself has been, widely recognized as a model report on addressing school safety issues. And I think the approach that they're taking this time includes working with members of Homeland Security, state police, and some local chiefs of police, as well as other experts in the field. So that'll provide us with another, an updated report as we reflect on our own school safety issues. And then related to that, it was pointed out that the New Jersey Department of Education, state police, and Homeland Security will actually come into district and do a free evaluation of our security procedures if we feel something like that is necessary, recognizing we've got a great program in place and tremendous cooperation with all of our local police units. It may be something to consider. Certainly can't argue with the price.
Yeah.
The prosecutor's office actually also sent an email today offering to do the same thing. So there's been a couple of, and I don't know if it's in conjunction with that, I have to read the details, but same price offer, which is nice. It's always nice to have,
Yeah.
you know, to get some additional feedback. So
That's all I
thank
have.
you.
And one thing with our local chief of police, he's not someone who's gonna object to having someone else come in and look and add more eyes to the problem.
Right.
And minds. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Greg. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Get home safe.
Close tomorrow.
Pardon?
Close tomorrow if you didn't.
Thank you.